Welcome to the world of probiotic foods. This is Cultured Food Life with your host, Donna Schwenk.
Welcome, everybody. It is January of a new year, and the things I most want to share with you on my podcast and upcoming podcast is how you can turn your life around and get well and feel happy. And it can be as simple as understanding the 100 trillion unseen helpers that live inside of you. And also by adding delicious probiotic foods into your diet. And it can be any kind of diet because we're all different. There are so many different diets to choose from nowadays, whether it's raw foods or paleo or veganism or vegetarian, or there's just so many different diets. And since we're all so different, the wonderful thing about these probiotic foods is you can add them to any diet. They work for any diet. And they're just really kind of like supplements or condiments that you add to a meal. And they can become a meal. For instance, kefir can be a whole meal for you for breakfast. But in most cases, you can just add them. And you don't have to have huge amounts of them. Little bits makes all the difference. And I love talking about them. So let me do a recap. So what are probiotic foods? These foods are made with cultures, living cultures, that are infused with billions of probiotics, things like kefir, cultured vegetables, kombucha, water kefir, sourdough breads, Rejuvelac. There's just so many new kinds of fermented foods. They're actually very old foods, but they've really been a surge in them coming back and people eating them again. And I want to teach you how to add them to your life in a way that's easy, that's fun, and that will become something that you'll do on a regular basis. And it will just become a habit. And it will really change your life like it has mine. Because once you start eating them, you realize how good you can feel. And when you feel that way, you want to stay that way. It wasn't too long ago that I was filming some videos for a series of videos that I was doing. And I remember when I was filming these videos that I kept moving to the right, and the director kept yelling at me saying, "You keep moving to the right. Why are you moving to the right?" And it was a dark room, and I was feeling a little disconnected. And finally, when we stopped filming, I said to the director, "I keep moving to the right because I'm trying to see the camera guy. I feel like I'm talking to a nebulous mist, and these foods are important to me, and I want to tell somebody and see their face and feel them so they can understand just how much these foods have helped me." And I feel that way sometimes on my podcast, that I'm sitting in my house with, podcast equipment, and many times I just close my eyes and pretend that someone's sitting in front of me and I'm talking to them. Because connecting to you is really important to me. So I hope you can feel that when I say that there's nothing I'd rather talk about than using these foods as medicine and consuming these foods with living organisms that have an intelligence that knows how to keep us well. And we were designed like this. Our bodies were designed this way. And nobody really talks about it. Most people talk about killing bacteria. So I've kind of taken this on as my job. I was given a tremendous amount of love for these living microbes. And as crazy as it sounds, I am their voice. I know they have complicated names, lactobacillus and Saccharomyces, and I love learning their names. I think it's fun for me, and I want to help you understand that we are more than just cells. We are bacteria, 10 times the cells in our body. And when you feed those trillions of microbes, they keep you well, and they keep me well. And so I'm just like you. I want so badly to be well, and when I was sick, those prayers were answered in a way I never expected, and they came in the form of food that sat upon my counter, making billions of microbes that increased the nutrients and loaded it with probiotics. And when I ate them, they got woven into my body, and they cleaned up the debris in my body. They talked to my immune system. They kept my blood sugars stable and my blood pressure at the right level. And they helped me detox from chemicals, and they helped keep my hormones regulated. And my sleep got better. My joints stopped hurting. And they did all this for me without even me knowing or understanding how they did it. And what a blessing it has been. And I feel very grateful for that. And this is my everyday life. And I've been doing it for almost 17 years. And these special cultured foods are my friends. And I was pretty sick 17 years ago. And through a series of magical events, these foods found their way to me. And I talk about that on my story video. You can look on my website. It's up in the right-hand corner and hear how I was able to find these foods. And I really encourage you to try them. Don't spend your life not feeling good. There's just too many wonderful things to experience in this life. And when you feel good, you do good. And it makes life really fun. So let me ask you a question. If all fear of sickness and disease would leave you now, how would you get out of bed every day? Would you embrace your life in a whole new way? Because that happened to me. I am less afraid than ever before because I know my body and especially my microbes, all 100 trillion of them, and I know how they take care of me. I don't live in the fear of getting the flu or getting sick. I just know that when something happens, I up my intake of these cultured foods and let the microbes do the work for me. And I've done it so many times and I've used it with my family that they work like medicine if we're sick, and I also know how to keep them healthy. And it is the coolest thing for me. And I love thinking of the communities of microbes, of trillions of them inside of me that work in numbers. They organize and defend themselves and defend me, my body, against foreign invaders. They detoxify you and me from toxins and allow you to get more nutrients from your food. They will help you calm down inflammation. Things like that can cause bowel disorders, and it can also have problems. Inflammation can cause asthma problems, acid reflux, blood sugar regulations and imbalances, hormones. All of these things can be helpfully governed by the microbes that reside within you. And it's just an amazing thing. And I've just touched the surface of what they can do, but they've changed my life, and they can change yours too. I got an email, and this lady's name was Pamela, and she posted this on my Lives Touch page. And if you want to go see it, just go to my culturedfoodlife.com website and then click the little thing in the menu bar that says Lives Touch. And I've got dozens and dozens of people's testimonies on there that they're just really encouraging. And they're fun to read, and they're also inspiring. And this lady's name was Pamela. And I cried when I read her story, and I want to share it with you. Pam got really sick about 7 years ago, and she was in desperate straits. She started to swell up with inflammation and had terrible pain and could barely walk. She was diagnosed with a boatload of things like fibromyalgia, RA, spinal stenosis, and the list went on. She walked out with a fistful of drugs for free and a list of prescription medications they wanted her to all start taking immediately. And one of these drugs was a form of a chemo drug, and she said she felt numb. She used to be a vibrant woman who trained horses and showed them alongside her daughter, and she wondered, how did I end up here? And she began taking these steroids and the drugs. And the second month of doctor visits, weight gain was 40 pounds, and she had more burning pain in her limbs. And long story short, the steroid meds were administrated wrong to her, and she wound up that she couldn't even stand up or walk. And she called to get help, and they told her to call her family doctor and asked him for Valium. They told her to get this Valium from her family doctor, a prescription for that drug. And then she knew she was in big trouble. And this is in her own words. I'm going to tell you to her in her own words. She said, I got mad. I got really mad. I immediately started looking for another doctor who really cared. And lo and behold, I found one. And he told me I didn't have all those diseases and that he needed to wean me off those meds. I had blood work, x-rays, etc. to confirm that I didn't have those diseases, but that my body was indeed reacting to something, and the inflammation was real, and so was the pain. I started searching the internet for old-fashioned remedies, herbs, spices, elixirs, whatever it took. And I had remembered that my grandparents used home remedies, and their parents did too. So I decided I was going to find some and make them myself. I found a website that mentioned fermented vegetables and explained the way that fermented vegetables were made years ago, and the benefits were unbelievable. So I started to search more, and I found a woman named Donna who made ferments and milk kefir, and I had to know more. So I read her blog like someone starving for food, and I couldn't sleep, so I read and I learned. I watched videos on how to make the stuff, and I immediately ordered the starters. I made my first batch of fermented veggies, and it was so good I ate way too much in the beginning, and I felt the die-off they speak of, and it was unpleasant, but I didn't stop. I knew this was the stuff I was meant to eat, and I knew I was on the right track. I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that Donna was my teacher. I went from veggies to water kefir, then to milk kefir, then to kombucha. I fermented everything. My husband said I was a mad scientist, and I laughed, and I said, I am making my own medicine, and it's healing for me from the inside out. I thank the Lord for Donna. My family eats my ferments. They drink my kombucha and my water kefir. I use my milk kefir for my protein drinks and for my salad dressings and dips. I use it in soups and so much more. My husband loves my ranch dressing and he dips his veggies in it. My lake friends love my fermented salsa and they talk about that the most. And my favorite is orange water kefir. Thanks to Donna and her research and forging ahead, I do have my life back. We have a houseboat. We go every weekend and every spare minute. I have kayaks and I use them a lot. I went on a kayak adventure of 14.7 miles on the river and I'm 58 years old. I didn't feel like I would ever make it at this age. Thank you for doing the groundbreaking research and making the public available to the research. I have purchased your grains and still have them and will have them for years to come. They still continue to make me well. My sister in Australia is also a follower too. I had kefir this morning and I'll do it for the rest of my life. And honestly, that's a wonderful story. And those types of stories I hear all the time. I get emails every day. But that happened to me too. That's why I'm here. I started with one simple thing in the morning, and that was kefir. It was a smoothie. It was a peach smoothie, to be exact. And that's how I started on this journey to get well. And you can start that too. You don't have to change everything all at once, but you can just start with one simple food. Maybe it would be a glass of kombucha. Maybe it would be some cultured vegetables. A spoonful is a lot. You get billions of probiotics. But this is how it started for me. I just started with one simple food, and it grew and multiplied. And as my insides changed and my gut flora changed, I craved more of them, and I wanted to eat healthier, and I wanted to eat different types of cultured foods, and it just spiraled into what you see now. It's been such a wonderful journey for me to start to understand how we are really designed, that we are wonderfully made. And these foods, whether it's kefir, which can be a milk kefir fermented, or it can be non-dairy. I made coconut kefir last week, and I've been eating that all week, and I love that. And or you can do water kefir, which is made with a different culture, but is just as delicious and has many versatile ways to be used. And kids love it. Your family will love it. It's fun to make. There's fermented vegetables, which you can make a jar of fermented vegetables and they can last 9 months in your fridge. And you only need like a spoonful to really get the benefits, because one spoonful of cultured vegetable has more probiotics than an entire supplement bottle. And it's inexpensive and it's delicious, and you can change the flavors. And I have hundreds of recipes on my website for that, and in my books and in some of my videos. One of my favorite recipes for this time of year for fermented vegetables is jicama if you're jicama. And it's jicama if you're sickama. I said that backwards, sorry. And you can just take this. It's just this wonderful, crunchy, they call it the Mexican potato. It's this crunchy thing, and you just stick it in a jar, and you add a little orange zest, and you have a little orange juice, and you let it ferment for a couple of days. And jicama is a very powerful prebiotic, so you're going to get a lot of benefits from this fermented vegetable, and it will last very, very, very long time in your fridge. I have a video on it on YouTube and on my website on how to make it. I have the recipe on there, and it's a fantastic thing to keep colds and flus at bay, especially in January, this time of year when it's so prevalent. But I have tons of other vegetables that I culture, And you're basically just chopping up vegetables, putting them in a jar, giving them a culture and letting them ferment, covering them with water and letting them ferment. And they stay perfectly preserved in your refrigerator for many months because the good bacteria keep out the harmful pathogens and they dominate the environment and keep your food really, really safe, safer than raw foods. And that's due to the large amounts of good bacteria in them. Kombucha is a fantastic drink. I just had a conversation with my sister. She got some kind of a infection on her head and she was going to have to take an antibiotic. And she says, well, what can I do? And I said, man, you got to at least have kombucha because kombucha is fantastic. It can't be killed by antibiotics because it's a probiotic yeast and it's so fantastic for protecting your gut. Lots of times when you take an antibiotic, when you take an antibiotic, your gut is like a rainforest. And in that rainforest is all these different plants or whatever, different bacteria, different yeast. And so what happens is when you take an antibiotic, it wipes it out. And normally when you have all these different bacteria, they all have a place in your gut. And so they keep the harmful pathogens at bay. And so, like, for instance, if you were to introduce a weed to a rainforest, it really wouldn't hurt it that much because there's so many other plants already dominating there. Well, it's the same with your gut. As long as you have a lot of good bacteria, pathogens can't really get a foothold, for instance, like Candida. But when you take an antibiotic, you wipe out all that good flora, so then opportunistic pathogens or yeast will want to take over. So you want to make sure that you still try to build that good flora back up. And one of the things I recommended to her was kombucha because it's really interesting. When you take an antibiotic, the gut lining kind of starts to shed a little bit because it's been stripped of its good bacteria and it can be something that can harm the gut. And so what happens is kombucha lines the gut lining and it pretends that it's a pathogen and attracts pathogens to it. And then when they get there, it destroys and kills them. So it's really very protective of the body. And cultured vegetables also have an ability to do this. And so does kefir. Also has what they call transient bacteria. A lot of them are transient. They don't last very long in the body, but then a lot of them do because there's 50 different kinds. And so many of them will be stronger if you have them every day. So I really recommended that to her because I've seen that again and again. Oftentimes people will need to take antibiotics. I'm not against them. I think they're prescribed too often, but I think that sometimes we need them. But as long as you rebuild your gut flora, and this is a great way to do that with cultured foods, you're going to keep that gut that's like a rainforest healthy and strong and thriving, and it's going to keep disease at bay and so many other things. And so, it's fun to try these foods. Just try the one that most interests you. Give them a whirl. See if they make a difference. You might experience a die-off in the beginning because you're ingesting billions and billions of good bacteria. So they are going to want to dominate and kill some of the pathogenic bacteria if you have them in your gut. So you might experience some symptoms like a little bit of loose stools, or constipation can also happen too because as it kills it, the body can't eliminate the debris fast enough. So sometimes that can happen too. Or you can feel a little sluggish. I have a great article on this called The Healing Crisis in Cultured Foods, and I believe I have a podcast on it too. And you might want to take a listen to that too. But it's also what they call the healing crisis. It's a sign that you're getting healthy, and it's a sign that your body is reorganizing. And when you get to know these microbes, these trillions of microbes that reside within you, and you start to work with them, your life really changes. And you become healthier, and your mood changes. You'll be happier. And it's just what I do. I live it. I love it. And one of my biggest mottos is, if you really love what you do and you live it and you believe in the benefits, the people who are looking for you will find you. And that is exactly what has happened to me. I am the messenger here. I hope that something I say will help change your life because I'm so grateful for what they've done for me. Have a great week, guys, and thank you so much for listening.